Okay, so welcome to Become Odara. My name is Clara Otoni. If that's your first time in the channel, please make sure to subscribe. Become Odara is a platform where we connect women through storytelling. And today we have a very special guest, a friend of mine for over 6 years. And since 12 years old, she has been doing a lot of magic with web designing, photography, and much more. Jessica Innis is a creator, a designer, an innovator. She has a bachelor degree in chemistry and economics from Smith College, where she took several leadership roles. And Jessica has always been engaged in empower her communities and communities with an S at the end, because Jessica has several platforms where she's talking to people. She has at least 6 Instagram accounts, and she has a YouTube channel. She's also creating content for Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, and TikTok. So she has also a business called Red Flowers. She also has a magazine called Bloom, and much, much more. In this conversation, we're going to talk about family, work, anime, sexuality, race, feminism, and much more. So, welcome to Become Odara, Jessica Innis, or should I say Shauna Moon? Did I leave anything out? Like, how would you define yourself these days? Welcome.
That was an amazing introduction. Honestly, sometimes I forget how many projects I am also working on. So to hear somebody else list everything out, I was like, oh my gosh, so many. Yes, but my name is Jessica Innis. Hi everyone. I also go by the name of Shauna Moon. Shauna Moon is my artist name. My middle name is Shauna, so that's part of the reason why that I'm called Shauna Moon. But yes, that was I don't even know what to say. Like that that was everything to say about.
I'm glad I left something out, and we'll go about during the interview, I'm sure. I would like to start with you telling us the story of the time you convinced your mom to move out so you could go to a different school.
Okay, yeah. So I talked to you about this at a different time where I said that when I was younger, I spent a lot of time moving around. It was just like my situation. I live with my mom and my younger sister. Currently, right now, I also live with my grandparents. But when I was younger, especially coming from an immigrant family, education is very important to us. And it was very important to my mother as well that my sister and I would receive an education, a good quality education. I started when I was younger, when I lived in a more like urban neighborhood or impoverished neighborhood, a poor community. When I was living in the city, my mom put me in charter school because she didn't want me to go to the public school in that area. So I believe that education was important. And when I was in middle school, I had realized that the high school that I would be attending wasn't going to be that like great comparatively to another location, because how America splits up neighborhoods in terms of public education is dependent on like the tax revenue and whether or not that neighborhood is actually like considered a good neighborhood. So I had convinced my mother, like presented some figures and being like, this is where this school is ranked and why I think we should move here, because I think I could get a better education in this area. And mind you, I was in 8th grade.
That's a very important detail.
But I was presenting the case and she agreed to it. Obviously, there would be a lot more hardships because by moving, you have to pay more. Like neighborhoods to get that education is more expensive. But I said it would be a worthy investment. And it was a good investment. I do think that moving to that location did a lot better for me, but I knew the importance of an education at a very young age.
Absolutely. And I love that you comment on your immigrant family because, hey, I'm an immigrant too. And absolutely, like education is everything. My mom is a teacher, so I understand completely like how education can be so transformational for anybody at any time. But beyond the books, you have self-taught many things to yourself. Like I know that you speak Korean, you learn how to edit, how to do like videos, even like your music, you are producing everything mostly on your own. So was that something that came out of the curiosity of trying new things, or mostly like that's the only way that I can do because either you couldn't afford like school, like different classes and all this type of things, like doing courses, or was just more of out of curiosity? When does that happen? This self-taught spirit that you embrace so brilliantly.
Yeah, so for being self-taught like Korean and like editing and music, I feel like music would be the biggest one in terms of self-taught for me because I had no clue. I just really didn't have a clue. But when it comes to wanting to do a lot of things, there's a lot of obstacles in the way to learn. Like I feel that if you have the drive to learn something, you will push yourself to learn that thing. It can be really difficult to start because you're working on building that habit. Like when I first wanted to learn Korean, it was really hard to commit to learning. I'm like, okay, I need to invest this amount of hours per week towards learning how to do this, or any project or any skill. I have to invest time into learning. For a lot of my learning is very much project based. So like I learn best on the go. So a lot of the times I'll start programs or start activities or things that I want to do. I just have a general interest and I'm just like, hey, why not try this? So like it's part curiosity, but also just like, hey, I have dreams and I want to be able to achieve my dreams. So I will do what I need to do at the current moment in order to achieve those dreams, which most of the time is just like me doing a lot of stuff on my own. And as you do, there are like one of the biggest setbacks is financial setbacks. Like it's hard to invest right away into something that you're not completely sure that you want to do. Like a lot of the times we want to try something, but you may not be like, I've decided this is what I want to do and this is how I want to do it. So a lot of times, and I'll use music as an example, getting into music is the most expensive thing ever. And people don't understand that, like, for a beat, for instance, like let's say I just wanted to play around with a beat one time, it may cost me anywhere from $30 to $50 for a single beat. And if I wanted to get like the track stems, that could cost anywhere from $100 to $200. And that's non-exclusively. That's just to use that beat for a single time. So like when I wanted to create an EP, I'm like, it's gonna cost me at least $500 to $1,000 just to acquire the beats. That doesn't even include right. So that doesn't even include like the recording time, getting someone else to mix and master it, just like a lot of the pieces that are a time and money investment in order to do music. So like anytime I'd be like anybody's doing music, I'm like, I don't know how y'all did that because that's crazy. It's just so expensive. I and the return is not that big because like when it comes to streaming, like streaming dollars or streaming money, you're only getting paid by a couple cents. Like I think it's maybe like 6 or 12 cents per stream. So I'm like,
Yeah.
it's money. I can't just throw that in, but it is something I want to try. So I did spend a lot of time like learning and meeting other people that do production and stuff like that to figure out how things work, just like playing around. Cause I'm like, I don't know if this is something I completely want to do full like jump in head on yet, but I do know it's something that costs a lot of money.
Yes, no, absolutely. I want to talk about that a little bit further, but just a step back when you're talking about like learning Korean, because that's not something that like most people go about, right? Like they might want to learn Spanish and English most of the time because those are the two languages that, or maybe Mandarin because, you know, like people are more and more doing business in China and all that. But why Korean? I'm gonna kind of answer a little bit of the question I'm asking because you comment you went to different schools, and I know that you had a very diverse in the sense of like you have like a lot of Asians in your classes too. Did that influence you to go and learn Korean, or when does that start?
So actually, that has nothing to do with why I wanted to learn Korean. Like when I went to high school, Mandarin was offered as a course, and I took Spanish growing up. So like, so
Hey.
like, so like, because I was born here in the US, I know English, and my family is from Jamaica. So like, I know how to speak in English patois, which is just a dialect for Jamaica. And then I know some Spanish. Like I know good enough Spanish that I wouldn't be considered like an obvious like complete beginner, but like I still need to work on Spanish, and that's something I plan to return to. It's just that like right now my Korean was not as good as my Spanish, so I was like, okay, I want to focus on learning Korean. The reason why I wanted to learn Korean is that I'm actually interested in learning a lot of languages that pertain to entertainment industries. So because I'm very much interested in media and journalism, I thought that learning Korean would be a good idea, especially because Korean entertainment like K dramas, K pop has gotten very much a lot of global influence. I thought it would be a good idea to learn Korean for that aspect. But also, I wanted to learn a language that wasn't, letters that I could read off the bat. So for Korean, I have to learn Hangul, and Hangul is like the characters for Korean. And I was trying to choose between learning either Chinese or Japanese or Korean. And out of the three of them, Korean is the easiest to learn. so so I chose the one that was easiest to learn. Also, and because I thought of the benefit of just like global entertainment industries, I would like to learn more languages later on for the same reasons, for like intersecting into entertainment, because I would like to do more media journalism, and even just like thinking about music and any other form of entertainment. I think would be really nice to be able to communicate with other people. So that's
No,
why I learned Korean.
that is amazing. I remember, I don't know if it was Michelle Obama who said that. I might be misquoting her, but I don't think she'll be upset. It was something about the size of the world that you live in. It relates directly with the language that you're speaking. So like, yes, if you speak several languages, you expand your world. And I know you love to travel. So I want to talk about that too. So I just gonna be open tabs here in this interview, and we'll go back to that because one of the things that you talked about music, it was how you're mastering all these platforms and creating like beats and all these things. Like, how do you see? Because you're 25 now. Okay, so in the beginning of the internet, right, when everybody was doing things very in an amateur way, like the very first videos on YouTube was somebody in their house doing like whatever, and then they exploded, they become influencers, they become this huge production where like a YouTube channel has like several people now working for them and doing all that. How do you feel the pressure of starting off, if you feel the pressure of starting off, but you cannot start off as like an amateur? You have to have some level of professionalism in what you're doing, at least from anybody who will go and check it out, Jessica's YouTube channel. You see how pro she is in all that she's creating out there. So it's kind of crazy, especially for me who started very very much like you talking about music. I had no idea about editing, even though I went to journalism school, but we had editors who would do the editing part of our, like material. We would just go record and go to somebody else to edit. So how do you see, like as a creator in this time and age, like how do you see like this pressure of being amateur, being professional, even to the starting point?
So I have mixed feelings about this. Personally, I don't think that you have to be as great. I feel honestly like when it comes to it, it's a lot of pressure that is self-created when it comes to issues like that. Like I used to think that I needed to be perfect. Even when I first started out, I wasn't too thought on like, oh, okay, I have to have multiple edits or I have to have everything be perfect. I was like, honestly, what matters the most, and I think this is something that like Gary Vee talked about, is the content. So I was like, I need to make sure that the content that I'm creating is actually interesting to other people. Even if the lighting is great and I have 30,000 edits, if the content is trash, nobody cares about any of those things. At the end of the day, it's about the content. So I focused in the beginning just making sure that I was creating quality content that would people would want to be interested in, like be engaged in. And then from that point, when I hit like my first milestone, I was like, okay, now I can start to incorporate more things. Like I could be like, let me put in some edits, some zoom ins. Like I'll try to like do different and diverse content from different angles. So I think in the beginning, for me, it's just about creating the content. And that's the same thing for music. Like music quality is very important to music. Like it's not good to have things sound janky. But when I was just like first making music and stuff, I used to concentrate on that a lot. I still kind of do, but I'm like I also realize I'm like, hey, you know what? You're not a music producer. Relax. like like
Yeah.
this is not what's most important to me as a creative in music. My most important part is making sure that I can write and that I can rap on beat and do different styles and play around. And then people at that point, if people like the content, they like the sound, that won't matter in the beginning. It's like when I'm trying to move forward and network and interact with other people, that's when quality will need to be of the utmost importance.
Definitely. And you are very talented. So creating this content, I think you comment Gary Vee, and another thing that he usually say is that documenting anything that you're doing, right? And I know that a lot of the content, especially like in your YouTube channel, is about like you're traveling and all the cultural differences and the things that you're learning and all that. Like I know that one of the videos, if I'm not mistaken, like is your most viewed video. It's about dating in South Korea, which is yes.
Well, technically, it's a club story time, so it's not necessarily about dating. It was like my first night out at the club.
Yes, yes. And that got like lots of views. And you even did like a second video about like why you don't like what was like what I don't like about dating and what I don't like about men, where you talk about sexual harassment, you talk about like stalking and emotional manipulation and all those type of things. And you are creating it. You seem to be very focused in your career in terms of being a creator. And whenever like I look at women who are doing really well, like in approaching their life and their career, it always comes to me that it might be a fairy tale that people think about, like the love life balance type of thing, you know? Like, do you believe in that? Where you stand on this?
So I talked a little bit about this in that particular video. It's not that I don't believe in love or dating or relationships or things like that. It's just that my personal experiences that I have had have not been in general all that great, which makes me think because I have another story time video planned out for next week, which also talks about like an event of like I've just been in a lot of painful experiences when it comes to those type of things. So like I do think it works out for some people. I am not currently in the headspace where I want to focus on that. Like there's so many things I do, as you listed in the beginning, that like I think that building relationships in any regards, not just like romantic ones, but like friendships and stuff like that require work and time and like commitment. And I just in this current space, I don't feel like that's something I'm interested in committing to. Like right now, I really want to focus on my own personal growth and my career growth. And then I think maybe like in a year or two, I can think about other prospects, but that's just not something that I'm interested in this current place and time.
Yeah, and you know, like life doesn't really have rules in terms of that. You were saying like, well, in 2 and 3 years, and then boom, you go, I don't know, put the trash out and you meet the love of your life. Who knows? You know, like who knows? I think it's great that you talk about like relationships, because I know you, just like me, were also raised by your mom and your grandparents, right? So in my experience, I think anytime that we are involved in a relationship, we bring a lot of whatever we learned growing up, like, or childhood wounds, if you would, like to those relationships. From my experience, for instance, I was often being subservient for my partners, and or either being subservient or just like taking on a lot of things that I shouldn't or that I didn't have to, because of the fear of like having, like them abandon me just like my dad did, like that type of mentality. So of course I'm doing therapy, if you guys didn't notice. but but I want to ask you, because this is something that I see often with strong women, people who are doing a lot of things like you and I. In a way, it's like, you know what? It's a good thing that he wasn't there, because I was able to do all those things. Like I'm talking like about my dad, like putting me, into a point where I needed to do a lot of things. And a lot of the times, even like to get some type of recognition, to hope that, well, if he sees that I'm getting good grades, that I'm doing this and that, maybe he would come around and say like, oh wow, yeah, this is my daughter, type of thing. But that was not necessarily what happened. So I know that you have comment every here and there on this topic, so I just gonna put it out there, and you can comment if you'd like about this type of like relationship that you develop with your mom really well, because you even help her in the family business. You travel with her. It's part of the videos also, which I loved. I had so much fun like listening to all the stories that you shared there. Please guys, check it out. Like the story time is like just the best. And you tell everything with a lot of fluidity. I don't know how to say this word, but like you're always joyful. Whenever you're telling a story, you're always joyful, even though you might be talking about something quite sensitive.
Yeah, so about my dad. So when it comes to my father, I think let me see what age. I think it was when I was about 6 years old. I stopped having expectations or wanting acceptance from my dad at a very young age. I just was like at this, and I think that was the tone that kind of set me up growing up. I had a thing where like I didn't hold a lot of expectations for other people. Like I didn't like I don't hold people by a higher standard. I don't I don't tend to have a lot of expectations for people, because when I was growing up, I was like having expectations is a great way or easy way to set yourself up for disappointment. so so when it comes to me and my father relationship, like I didn't necessarily, up until the point I was like 5 or 6, I had seen my father, but then my father had moved to a different city. He had moved to New York City. And at that time, he was, because I have an older half sister. He was taking care of my older half sister, who was born and raised in Jamaica, but she was staying here. Now she now lives in the U.S. She has like, I'm an aunt. I have two. I have a niece and a nephew. I don't really talk about it because I haven't met I still haven't met my niece, and I haven't met my nephew since he was born. It's just I just haven't been in that situation. But in terms of like my relationship with my dad, I never tried to really please anyone. I didn't grow up with that feeling. I was very much like, at the end of the day, I can only be here for me, because like people are going to judge me or want things from me in a way that I just can't provide. Like at that point, I think what I had a harder time is building relationships with other people that I thought were long standing, or having trust in other people. I didn't really see the point in terms of long term effective communication, or just having friendships that were meant to be important and lasting. That was the biggest thing that I had taken away from like not having a relationship with my father. My my relationship, like I do understand some people having abandonment issues, and that is also something that I had to work on. But I don't know. I don't really have any interest in that man. At this point, like at this point in my life, I think what I could do is that like there was a time in my life where I was like, I want to be the best person I possibly can be so he can see what an amazing daughter he missed out on. But at that point, I honestly don't care what that man do at all. I have no interest. He has, my dad has already moved back to Jamaica, so I don't know when I'll see that man ever again. So I kind of let that go as a whole little shindig. No interest, but yeah.
No,
And
I
then,
yes.
oh no, what I was gonna say, but I do have a very close relationship with my mother. I spend a lot of time with my mom. She can be aggy and annoying, but you know, she's my, she's my mom, and I love her, and she's taking care of me all this time. So I right now I just want to work and do and achieve so that I can help her and give her all that she has given me in return, and that's all I can really ask for.
No, the relationship of you two, it looks like just like two best friends because you have inspired her, I believe, in so many ways, with the K-drama being one of those. Like you comment that you got her into it, and now her mom has a YouTube channel where she review K-drama shows, which is like very random to me to think that I'll get my mom into something like that. So it's just fascinating. You also helped her on the other side of the business, like in her business, like flipping homes, and she's also like in finance. So this kind of like you guys have a very well set supportive team, it seems like, in your home. And I think that really shows in everything that you do because of the way that you talked about her, or even when we see you both on camera, you just guys seem to have a good time. So I really like that. And when I met you at Draper, we were in a entrepreneur program in Silicon Valley in 2015, and I met Jessica. She had a vision for Red Flowers to be one of the products that Red Flowers would create was a shampoo because she wanted her mom to like wash her hair and go. It was something like that. I will always remember the wash and go type of thing because she saw her mom like spending several times, like fixing her hair. And if there is anything about Jessica that she has even commented right now about like how she is inventive and she learned on the go. And you also like when you don't find something, you create yourself. And that's what happened with Bloom, right? Like you just felt the need of a magazine or an outlet where you could discuss issues or topics that not necessarily issues, but like topics that were related to everybody, but specifically talking to Black voices, Black women, and Black identities. So you have several topics, which I think was really interesting. The way she designed the magazine, and every season she will have a topic specific. So she will talk about sexuality, body positive, and so forth. So how did that outlet translate into what part of it was like your own personal like experience in your self-awareness journey, or it was also something that you saw among your friendships or your family and then you decided to translate into the magazine?
So I originally had no intention of creating a magazine. I was actually, so what I wanted to do originally is just build a guide. Like I just wanted like a single outlet. And what happened is once I created the single outlet, people were like, we want more. So that was the response from the audience. And I was like, I don't really know about that. That seems like a lot of work. I just don't know, like, for me, whether or not that was for me, because like, as you said, like Red Flowers had originally started out as what I wanted to do was a wash and go product because I was a chemist. That necessarily hasn't changed. I just like, I had read or watched a TED Talk, Start With Why by Simon Sinek. So I kind of started from a different place, which is like, I wanted to start with the perceptions of Black women and media. So I got really much into media journalism. And then I would and then I was like on the later in the line, I could work on products and care and what that necessarily looks like for this set community. But when it came to the magazine, I was like trying to put things together into categories. I was like, okay, I should do something for care. Let me create a self-care guide. And then, and that is when I had ended up creating the guide. I reached out to different people. I was like, hey, I'm working on a project. Would you like to be a part of it? Would you like to be a part of it? I would love to get different perspectives, people from different expertise and background, and just put it together as a guide. Because I was like, I can't make this myself. I can't make the whole thing alone. And then what happened when people were like, once it was done, which happens all the time, I feel like it's a lot harder to get people involved into a project when you're working on it and they haven't completely seen the vision. And then once they've seen the vision and seen what's happened, they're like, wait, I want to join. So like when I was done it, the guide, everybody was like, wait, you should make more issues. I would like to be a part of it. Can I write something too? I would be interested. So that's what ended up happening. And then as for the topics were actually discussed with the people who were on the team, the people that were helping to create the magazine. So like some of it was me, but I was like, hey, what should we do? And we would have like a little meeting and we'll be like, hey, we should talk about these and we could bring on these people. And depending on which people agreed, like which influencers agreed to be a part of the magazine issue, we were like, okay, this is what they have in common, and maybe then we could create a topic centered around this, and that's how we'll go forward with this issue.
All right, I understood that now. Like, because you had like journalists, you have specialists, you have people like who had completely different like backgrounds, and you brought them together just beautifully. And the illustrations were just gorgeous. Like I loved everything that Bloom brought into the world, that you brought into the world. And in the very first edition, there was a statistic that really caught me. Like I was like, wow, that's really shocking to me. When you talked about the Center of Disease Control and Prevention putting that Black women, 12.8% of them would have depression, and women itself, like in a binary world, they put that 70% of women would have like depression at one time in life. So that put Black women in a very like scary place, where being like the highest, population with the risk of developing depression. And that's a topic that really calls in my heart, because I have observed like my grandma with depression, several aunts, and it's something like always around. And in the first edition, even you wrote, I've gone to periods of depression. I have been going to therapy for mental health. I have allowed myself to be vulnerable. I have allowed myself to break down and cry, and that's okay. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, so growing up, I dealt with a lot of depression and anxiety. That had more to do with just like the world around me. Society is not an easy place. just in every single aspect. I had very low points. I dealt with a lot of times of just like waking up in a panic and like dealing with a lot of nightmares during the day and just like feeling very defeated and not wanting to do anything. I spent a lot of my, like I've mentioned multiple times that like I spent a lot of time growing up also being bullied. So I just like society and people as a whole didn't help better the situation. And then like having the situation of being from a poor income background and also being plus size and then also being Black and then having the issues with my father and then also growing, like, as much as I love my family, they're not the most emotionally intelligent people. So then there was many times growing up I also didn't feel very well supported because I am one of the more emotional people within this house. So all of those kind of come together, and I spent a lot of time just like being depressed and crying, like finding space. A lot of the times in order to like get through being depressed, I took up dance. So dancing has been my primary outlet for depression and being sad. When I was in college, because colleges tend to have therapy services on campus, I took therapy. I don't necessarily take therapy right now because I personally am not in the same space that I was back in the day. Like it was a lot worse. Like I dealt with a lot of loneliness, because I had trust issues and things like that, I didn't see relationships as important. I dealt with a lot of loneliness because I didn't feel like I could make connections with people. Or I didn't feel like I was having genuine, authentic relationships with people. So that's what I predominantly went to therapy for, because I felt very alone in the world. Necessarily now, I don't feel like that. I feel very well supportive. I have really great friends. I get along better with my family, especially since my sister grew up. I feel like she's gotten a lot nicer. I think now that she understands the real world, she's a lot nicer. So like, I get along with my family. I have really great friends and a great supportive system. And I've always been a very introspective person. So I do feel that like nowadays I'm not terribly concerned, except for like being overworked. I feel like if anything, I'm stressed over work. But like stressed in the sense of like my inner self, I'm at a lot more peace comparatively. But I do think it's okay. I think more people need to access care services, therapy services, and understand that like no matter what you're going through, like it's okay to be in pain. It's okay for things not to work out. It's okay to be sad and unhappy and experience emotions. And sometimes I don't feel like society gives us the space to do that, and feel like that we must always be perfect. And this is why I don't like perfectionism in any regard. It's okay to make mistakes and fail. And that's where I'm at in life.
I just loved and that you are open to even like discuss about those things, because I think we learn so much through the stories of others. Because when you can connect, this is something that I've learned even like sharing my point of views on the YouTube channel as well, like how I was avoiding talking about certain things because I didn't think anybody needed to hear. I didn't want to be a burden to anybody. But then in the moment that you speak up, everybody seems to connect because they know what you're talking about. They're like, oh yeah, I feel like that too. Oh, hold up, you? Because whoever sees you, like joyful and talking and happy all the time, it's important for us to kind of like say like, hey, yeah, I have that time too. Like you might not be recording yourself when you are depressed, but those things also happen. And I think it's amazing to see like these accomplishments as well, like seeing where you started and where you are right now. And I look forward to see where you're going to as well as your friend. And when talking about like minorities in general, like me as a foreigner, you as a Black woman, when we talk about accomplishments, there is a lot involved into meritocracy, like people who would think that, I don't know if meritocracy is a word in English, because I might be just translating from Portuguese, but just that sense that like, well, she's a Black woman and she did it, so it's possible, like in a way that like, it's easy if you really want something, you can do it yourself as well. And of course it gets into the part of like representation and how important that is. Of course you have to be there and you have to be doing things and to set yourself as like a model in a way so other people can dream about those things. But I have a serious issue with meritocracy, because when people say like, oh yeah, like she learned, because in Brazil, like we don't have like so many people who speak English, for instance, and I come from a very small town. Of course today it's easier to have access because we have internet, right? So anybody can learn anything, but we also have to remember that not everybody has internet, like to this day. So especially now with the pandemic, we saw so many kids, like my nephew in a class of 40 students, he was among the 12 kids who had internet access in my hometown so he could do like his assignments. So right there you see the inequality that we live in. But for someone, you are 25-year-old creating content that it seems like 24/7, really. What type of example and legacy you see yourself like living in the world? And I know that we are just in the start of life, but you already setting yourself as a model. I see being your friend, you're already a model to me. So I can only imagine for all the other women, like you said, like being Black, being plus size, and being so positive. like in expressing and using dance and using music. How do you think about this legacy that you're developing here?
I thought a lot about what type of legacy I want to leave behind. And honestly, like I just want to make sure that the people that are like me feel well supported. Like you do say there is one of the issues that I do have with people being like, oh, there's this representation, so if you work hard, you too can make it. I don't think people take into consideration the other factors that that person had to go through to even get to that point, and how that may be difficult for any person that comes after that. So just because one person made it or a couple people made it doesn't take into consideration the difficulties that it shouldn't be that hard for like people that are poor, or people who are immigrant, or people who are black, or people who are women, or people who are queer to get into certain spaces, because they're not taking into consideration the systems and institutions that hold back those people from moving forward. So I don't necessarily like that either when people say in that phrasing. I do think that like things can be possible, but I don't think that they should be as hard as they are for certain demographics for no reason. But as for a legacy, like when it comes to me, like I think recently I learned a lot about this through YouTube Live. I did last week, where I was talking to people that are like subscribed to me. And I never really got the chance to really talk to see their opinions and stuff like rolling through the screen. But like people spent a lot of the time asking me questions like for advice and stuff like that. And my opinions, they were like, how did you learn to, and that is kind of why I made that recent video, like how I learned to love myself. Or they were like, how did you learn to like remove yourself from toxic environments and just all those other things. And I was like, sure. Like it ended up turning into a Q&A. I didn't have any intention for that. But like I realized just like me living my truth and living myself is a legacy in its own, that like I didn't I think it's sad that it's so hard for people to live unapologetically. I for me, I just want to show people that like it is okay to be yourself. Whatever you're interested in, whatever you want to do. Like I do not want to feel like in any way that society is holding me back from doing the things that I want to do. Or that the eyes or the eyes that I create in my own head. I don't want my own thoughts or my own doubts to hold me back from my full potential. And I want that to be true for anybody else. I just want to present that to other people. I was like, I believe that you can do as much as you believe that you can do or want to do. You just gotta let go. So I want to be the example of the person who does things because she wanted to do it and just did it. And that's enough for me as a legacy.
It is, and what a legacy, because I think most people, they kind of like know in a way that is like, yeah, like you have to be positive, you have to do this and that, but like really believing, like be really deep down when you're by yourself saying like, yes, I can do this, or yes, I had already accomplished many things. And you also, even though like you show like all this side of like being very entertaining when talking about like your trips or the thing, your hobbies, the thing that you enjoy, like dancing, for instance, you are also very vocal about things when like they need to be talked. And I know that you have talked about racism, you talk about blackfishing, you talk about like appropriation, right? Like, and there was a case with the Korean celebrity, which is from Ghana. I don't know if I'm gonna say his name right. San Okiere. How do I say his name?
Sam Okiri, and he's from Ghana.
Ghana, yes. And he was, there was an entire episode. If you guys want to know, just go to Jessica's YouTube channel and watch, and maybe she can explain a little bit of what happened there. But my question to you is, as a Black woman and entrepreneur, when people are trying, like you're trying to make a living of your creations, what is the best way that anybody can really support and stand against racism? Because when you need to stress talking about it, and we've seen this last year, especially, you know, like with George Floyd and all that type of thing, like it's a topic that it seemed like to be, we need to talk, and we also need to find ways to truly support. So how someone can, you as a Black entrepreneur can I mean, yeah, that's all the question.
So the person that I think that did a really great job of this, which is not going to be easy for everyone, I do think having conversations is important, but I don't like conversations that don't lead to any action. I feel like a lot of people spend a lot of time on the internet creating infographics and sharing like, hey, let's all put a black square for this, but like we're not talking about how this actually leads to any action, or like what are some actionable plans that we plan to do in order to make these changes. Like you can talk, we can, it's, it's like how Congress has discussions on things that need to happen, and they have multiple recesses of going back to saying, but then nothing changes because they have never come to a decision. And I don't think that it's helpful towards anyone to continue conversations and not do anything afterwards. But an example of somebody who I think did a really good thing for this is Alexis Ohanian. He's the founder of Reddit, currently married to Serena Williams. So what he did is he gave up his position on a board in order to allow him to be replaced by someone that was a person of color, or specifically Black, for his position. Because most of the time, people don't take into consideration that a lot of the positions that do need in order to be filled to like create that change are already taken up by a lot of privileged people. So if there's no entryway, unless you plan to expand your board members or provide or create those positions for those people, then nothing will change if you still have all your top leaders only coming from their single-sided story perspective, like what Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie said. Like most of the time, like when you go to business school or anything, they prefer to have people that have different perspectives. You can't just have a company that sees things from a single perspective, a single viewpoint. So you either create those positions or you relinquish the power of your position to make room for those people that don't have the opportunity easily to enter into that space. So that is one thing that like people that have power can do. Like in terms of everyday people, I think it's also the same instance where like you need to see the ways in which you have your own biases and prejudices, but also creating space at the table. If you see somebody in the room is not there being represented, invite them in. Sometimes they just don't know. Like resources are not something that is widely known to everybody else. So if you do see some resource or some information, whether it be money, knowledge, or any of those things, and they don't have that, invite them into that space so that they can create that perspective. And then by inviting them, hopefully that would invite more people that they know into that space as well. So then you now have a more diverse community, more diverse perspectives, but you're also sharing and providing more resources and giving that space up so that people who don't have that opportunity now do.
How about supporting Black artists? Jessica has a Patreon, guys. So if you're listening to this, if you're watching, like I think it's so important. I have a friend who told me about a bar here in Long Beach, and he was like, "Oh yeah, we don't go there anymore." I was like, "Why not?" It was like, "Oh no, like they were being racist, this and that," and just this thought of like not supporting also people who are taking right this type of like attitude to this day. I think it also adds up to what you said, like yes, because like everyday people, they might not be in a position to give up on their position in the job so another person can take over, but I think like supporting the minorities in that way as well is like one of the ways that at least here in our house we try to do more and more, you know, like supporting minorities in general, like Black people and Latin people, and you know, like in that way. Now, just so we can finish up, like here at Become Odara, we believe in the power of daily rituals to embrace our Odara spirit, because the Odara spirit is pretty much, it's a word from the Yoruba language, and it comes to a connection with your inner goddess. So this peace of mind that you talked about. And do you have any rituals, anything that you do to connect with your inner peace, with your Odara way?
So I spend a lot of time doing like affirmations. I just like sometimes I need a quick pick me up where I'm just like, it's not that I'm feeling down or not feeling that like I'm not doing what I want to do, but sometimes I'm like, Jessica, you're great, or like you got this. Look at us doing this. like I'll just sometimes like talk to myself in a way that's very encouraging to give that positive reinforcement. Like I was like, look at you, like you got this, you're gonna do this, and then we're gonna clean and finish this up, and then it's a wrap. So I do spend a lot of my days doing that during the time, and then I do also spend a lot of time making sure that like the things I spend a lot of time doing things that I enjoy. So like I need to make sure that like I work out a certain amount of hours per week. I need to make sure that like I have tea time because I because I like tea, or like
What
or
type
my
of
food.
thing?
So my favorite tea right now is like this. This is a tea that I bought from China. It's like so what it is a lychee black tea mixed with fruit tea. So that's one of my favorites. But I also like Earl Grey teas and like herbal teas, like hibiscus teas. I just really like tea. So I like all types of tea. So I'll have like tea time, working out, and then like I like my food to look pretty. So like if I ever take a picture of food, like me dressing it out to make pretty, it was like, okay, we're gonna have a good day. Our food looks pretty. We did all our skincare routine already. We brushed our teeth. We did everything. Now we're ready to go. We hyped ourselves up. We got this.
Woo! Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all this amazing knowledge with all of us. And do you have, as we have like this community spirit here, I'm trying to bring on more people that I might not eventually like just bump with them across the street because we are not even able to go out that much anyway. So do you have any women that you would refer to Become Odara to interview? Somebody who also has a brilliant life story of resilience, somebody who has something to share that is empowering as well. So if you do, please say their name.
I'm so bad at on the spot. Like I could send you, I could look into a list of things. I'm so bad. Like if there'd be like if they had like an association game, I'll be the worst person. Like I'm so bad at thinking up names all the top. But I'll check and I'll reach out to some people and I'll see what I can do.
Okay, that sounds good. And I would ask you also like to send me all the information that we have to put here in the description in terms of like where people can find you, all your 6 Instagram accounts and and website and all that, because I'm sure people have a blast just like checking out everything that you're putting out there. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. And if you have anything else to say, please shoot.
Thank you so much for having me. And this was so nice to do. Sometimes I'm always a little scared during interviews because I know that we always will get into some vulnerable topics, but I feel like I'm now at a comfort level that I'm okay. But this was really great. And I will definitely share this once it comes out with everyone else. And thank you guys all for watching. And that's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Become Odara daily. Thank you.